This was not training meant to motivate you. It was training meant to break you. In the age of comfort, convenience, and endless distraction, this system would feel cruel, almost inhuman. But centuries ago, it forged minds so sharp they did not flinch under death, hunger, or fear. Bushido was not a philosophy you read about. It was a discipline you survived. And what made it terrifying wasn't the physical pain. It was the mental standard, the absolute refusal to tolerate weakness, excuses, or self-pity. Tonight, you're going to witness the scariest discipline training ever recorded. Not because it involved violence, but because it demanded total mastery over the self. This is Bushido. Chapter 1. The discipline that terrified even the strong. No one warned him how quiet it would be. He expected shouting, orders, punishment, some brutal test of strength that would break the body first and leave the mind gasping behind it. Instead, the training began with silence. In the early hours before dawn, when the world still slept, the master would sit motionless. No instructions, no encouragement, no explanation, just presence. And the student was expected to do the same. This was Bushido discipline. And it was terrifying, not because it demanded violence, but because it demanded something far more difficult. Absolute honesty with yourself. Most people believe discipline is about forcing action, pushing harder, grinding through resistance. But Bushido never worked that way. The samurai understood something modern people have forgotten. If you attack the body before mastering the mind, you build a fragile warrior, strong on the outside, hollow on the inside. Bushido discipline began by stripping away illusion. The illusion that motivation would save you. The illusion that talent mattered more than consistency. The illusion that strength came from intensity instead of control. The first lesson was simple, but brutal. Sit. Do nothing. Observe everything. Your thoughts would scream first. Plans, regrets, fantasies, fear. Every unresolved thought you've been running from your entire life would surface the moment silence removed your distractions. Most men couldn't last 5 minutes. Their bodies were still, but their minds were wild animals, crashing against invisible walls. The master would say nothing, because Bushido was never taught through words alone. It was learned through endurance of the self. This is where modern discipline collapses. Today, we try to discipline ourselves by adding more routines, more rules, more pressure. But Bushido did the opposite. It removed everything unnecessary until only truth remained. And the truth was uncomfortable. The student quickly realized something disturbing. The real enemy was not laziness, not weakness, not lack of talent. The enemy was avoidance. Avoiding boredom. Avoiding discomfort. Avoiding the raw feeling of effort without reward. Bushido discipline forced you to face those sensations without escape. No phone, no music, no praise, no countdown to relief. Just time, breath, awareness. And that was enough to break most people. Because when distraction is removed, you see yourself clearly. You see how quickly your mind negotiates, how easily it creates excuses, how desperately it seeks stimulation. The samurai called this exposure. You could not defeat what you refused to see. The early phase of Bushido training was not about combat. It was about obedience to stillness, learning to remain present even when nothing interesting was happening, especially when nothing was happening. This is why the discipline was feared. Not everyone was allowed to continue. Some left voluntarily. Others were dismissed quietly. The master could tell within days who was lying to themselves. Those who claimed they wanted discipline, but only on comfortable terms. Bushido did not negotiate. If you could not sit with boredom, you would never stand firm in chaos. Once the student learned to endure stillness, the next layer revealed itself. Precision. Every action now mattered. How you stood, how you walked, how you held your weapon, how you breathed while doing nothing at all. Sloppiness was not tolerated, not because it looked bad, but because it revealed an undisciplined mind. The samurai believed the smallest action reflected the largest weakness. If you rushed tying your sandals, you would rush strategy. If you cut corners in daily routines, you would cut corners under pressure. There were no shortcuts in Bushido. Training days were repetitive by design. The same movements, the same sequences, over and over, thousands of times, not to build muscle memory alone, but to destroy impatience. The mind would rebel. This is pointless. I already know this. I could be doing something more productive. The master would remain silent. Because Bushido discipline was not about efficiency. It was about mastery of reaction. Could you perform the same task with full attention for the thousandth time? Or would your ego demand novelty? Most people confuse discipline with intensity. Bushido defined it as consistency under monotony. That is why it worked. The student soon learned another brutal truth. Discipline is not built during motivation. It is built during resistance. During days when nothing feels rewarding. When progress is invisible. When effort feels wasted. Bushido trained you to continue anyway. Not blindly. Not angrily. But calmly. Calm was power. A calm warrior conserved energy. Observed clearly. Acted precisely. Panic was weakness. Rage was sloppiness. Excitement was distraction. The goal was internal stillness even while the body moved. This is what made Bushido terrifying. It demanded total alignment. No internal rebellion. No secret negotiations. No waiting for the right mood. You moved because it was time to move. You stopped because it was time to stop. Not because you felt like it. Modern people struggle with this because they've been trained to obey feelings. Bushido trained men to observe feelings without obeying them. That distinction changes everything. The student began to notice something unexpected. Life outside training felt different. Time slowed. Impulses weakened. Distractions lost their grip. Not because discipline was forced, but because awareness grew sharper. Bushido did not suppress desire. It exposed it until it lost power. And that was the scariest part. Once you see your impulses clearly, you can no longer pretend they control you. Responsibility becomes unavoidable. There was no cheering when progress happened. No ceremony. No validation. Growth was quiet. Almost invisible. The master believed praise created dependency. Discipline had to stand on its own. If you needed motivation, you were not ready. This was not cruelty. It was preparation. Because real pressure does not encourage you. It demands clarity. Bushido discipline forged men who could act without noise inside their heads. Who could remain composed when everything screamed to react. Who could hold to principle even when emotions begged for escape. And this was only the beginning. Before any blade was drawn. Before any opponent was faced. Before any victory was possible. The war was internal. And Bushido made sure you fought it first. In the next chapter, the training intensifies. Not through violence, but through deprivation, where comfort is removed deliberately, and discipline is tested when the body is exhausted and the mind is begging for relief. Because Bushido did not ask if you were strong. It demanded proof. Chapter 2. The discipline that forged fearless minds. Before discipline became a motivational slogan, before it was reduced to morning routines and productivity hacks, it was something far more serious. It was a matter of survival. In feudal Japan, discipline was not designed to make life easier. It was designed to make a man unbreakable. Bushido was not taught with speeches. It was carved into the nervous system through repetition, hardship, and deliberate discomfort. A samurai was not trained to feel confident. He was trained to remain steady when confidence disappeared. This is the discipline most people have never encountered, because it does not begin with action. It begins with restraint. A young trainee did not start by learning how to fight. He started by learning how to stand still, hours at a time. No movement, no shifting weight, no scratching an itch, no reacting to discomfort. Why? Because a man who cannot control his body cannot control his mind. And a man who cannot control his mind is already defeated. Stillness was the first battlefield. As minutes turned into hours, pain surfaced. Legs burned. The spine ached. Thoughts screamed for relief. The instinct to escape became overwhelming. This was the moment the real training began. Not when it hurt, but when the mind begged for permission to quit. The instructors did not shout encouragement. They did not motivate. They watched in silence. Because Bushido discipline does not care how inspired you feel. It only measures whether you remain. This is where most people fail today. Modern discipline collapses the moment discomfort appears. We stop when things feel heavy. We quit when progress becomes slow. We abandon the process the second it stops rewarding us emotionally. Bushido was built to eliminate that weakness entirely. The samurai learned early that discomfort is not an emergency. It is information. Hunger, fatigue, fear, pain. These were not enemies. They were signals. And signals were meant to be observed, not obeyed. Training continued long before sunrise. Cold mornings, empty stomachs, bodies still sore from the previous day. There were no warm-ups designed for comfort. The body adapted or it suffered. And slowly, something profound happened. The mind stopped negotiating. Most people live trapped in internal dialogue. Just 5 more minutes. I'll do it tomorrow. I deserve a break. Bushido training removed that voice entirely. Decisions were made once, then executed without debate. When training began, the mind was no longer consulted. It had already agreed. This is what true discipline looks like. Not forcing yourself every day, but eliminating the need to argue with yourself at all. Another core practice was deliberate exposure to fear. Samurai were placed in situations designed to trigger panic, darkness, isolation, uncertainty, loud, sudden disruptions. They were trained to remain composed while the nervous system screamed. The goal was not bravery. It was clarity. Fear clouds judgment. It narrows vision. It causes hesitation. Bushido discipline taught men to breathe, observe, and act while fear was present, not after it disappeared. That is the difference between courage and control. In modern life, fear looks different, but it works the same way. Fear of failure, fear of embarrassment, fear of discomfort, fear of starting. We wait until fear fades before acting, but it never fades. It only grows stronger the longer we avoid it. Bushido did not wait. It trained action inside fear. Another brutal element of this discipline was repetition without praise. No applause, no recognition, no validation. A movement was repeated thousands of times. Sword drawn, sword returned. Step forward, step back. Again, again, again. If done perfectly, nothing happened. If done incorrectly, correction came immediately. This stripped away ego. Most people today rely on external motivation, likes, compliments, attention. Without it, they lose momentum. Bushido trained men to act correctly even when no one was watching, especially when no one was watching, because character is revealed in isolation. Over time, discipline stopped feeling like effort. It became identity. The samurai did not ask, "Should I train today?" He asked, "Who am I?" And the answer already contained the behavior. This is why Bushido discipline was terrifying. Not because it was harsh, but because it removed excuses. There was no hiding behind emotions, no blaming circumstances, no waiting for the right mood. The system assumed weakness existed and designed training to erase it. And here is the truth most people avoid. You do not need more motivation. You need fewer negotiations with yourself. Bushido understood this centuries ago. The scariest part of this discipline was not the physical strain. It was the psychological exposure. Being forced to face your limits daily. Watching excuses collapse. Seeing how often the mind lies to protect comfort. That is why most people would quit. Not because they cannot endure pain, but because they cannot endure self-honesty. By the time a samurai faced real combat, the enemy was not the threat. Chaos was not unfamiliar. Fear was not paralyzing. He had already defeated the most dangerous opponent, the undisciplined self. And this raises a question that cannot be ignored. What would happen if you trained your mind the same way? Not with motivation, not with intensity, but with structure, restraint, and deliberate discomfort. In the next chapter, we will explore the most brutal aspect of Bushido mastery, the practice that erased hesitation entirely and turned discipline into instinct. Because once discipline becomes instinct, weakness has nowhere left to hide. Chapter 3. Discipline forged in silence. True discipline is not built in moments of intensity. It is forged in silence. Long before a warrior ever stepped onto a battlefield, before steel met steel, before life or death hung in the balance, discipline was trained in places no one ever saw. Empty courtyards at dawn, cold wooden floors before sunrise, long hours where nothing happened, yet everything changed. This was the hidden core of Bushido mastery. The world teaches you that progress must be loud, that effort must be visible, that if no one sees you struggle, it somehow doesn't count. But the Bushido path rejected this idea completely. The samurai understood something modern society has forgotten. The most dangerous strength is built when no one is watching. In Bushido training, silence was not a break from discipline. Silence was discipline. A warrior would sit alone for hours, sometimes doing nothing more than breathing, posture perfectly upright, eyes relaxed, mind alert. No music, no stimulation, no distraction, just stillness. To an untrained mind, this felt unbearable. The body would itch, thoughts would scream, restlessness would surge. And that was the point. Because discipline does not begin with action. It begins with control. Control over the impulse to move. Control over the urge to escape discomfort. Control over the mind when it looks for relief. Most people believe discipline is about forcing yourself to do hard things. But Bushido taught that true discipline is about refusing to obey weakness when it whispers. And weakness always whispers, first in silence. At the start, the warrior's mind would rebel. Memories surfaced. Worries multiplied. Doubts grew louder. The mind searched for stimulation, anything to avoid being present. In modern life, this is where we reach for our phones. In the warrior's world, there was nothing to reach for. So they learned to sit with the discomfort, not to fight it, not to suppress it, but to observe it without reacting. This was the training that separated ordinary men from unbreakable ones. Because once you can sit calmly inside discomfort, the outside world loses its power over you. Bushido masters believed that a man who could not master silence could never master action. If your mind collapses when nothing is happening, it will collapse even faster when everything is happening at once. This is why silence came before combat, before sword practice, before physical conditioning, before strategy. There was stillness, hours of it. And during this stillness, something terrifying happened. The false self began to dissolve. The part of you that needs praise, the part that seeks comfort, the part that runs from boredom, the part that panics when control is lost. One by one, these layers weakened, and beneath them, something sharper emerged. Awareness. The samurai trained to notice thoughts without believing them, fear without obeying it, pain without identifying with it. Over time, this created a profound internal shift. The mind stopped reacting automatically. It began to respond deliberately. This is where real discipline is born, not from motivation, not from emotion, but from clarity. A disciplined warrior did not rely on willpower. Willpower fluctuates. It weakens under stress. Bushido discipline was deeper than willpower. It was identity-level control. The warrior no longer asked, "Do I feel like doing this?" He asked, "What must be done?" And then he did it, calmly, precisely, without drama. Silence also trained patience, one of the most underestimated forms of strength. In a world obsessed with speed, the samurai learned to wait. to hold position, to conserve energy, to let moments unfold without interference. In combat, this was deadly. An impatient opponent revealed himself quickly. A disciplined warrior waited until the opening appeared naturally. No rush, no wasted movement. One decisive action instead of 10 desperate ones. This patience was not passive. It was alert stillness, like a drawn bow held steady. In modern life, impatience destroys discipline. People quit routines because results don't arrive fast enough. They abandon progress because discomfort lasts longer than expected. Bushido training eliminated this weakness at the root. The warrior accepted that mastery unfolds slowly, that suffering is not a signal to stop, but a signal to refine. Silence also stripped away ego. When no one is watching, there is no performance, no identity to protect, no image to maintain. Only effort remains, only truth. The samurai did not train to feel powerful. He trained to be effective. This is why Bushido discipline feels so terrifying to the modern mind. It offers no emotional reward in the moment, no dopamine, no validation, just quiet, relentless consistency. But over time, this consistency created something unstoppable. A man who no longer negotiated with weakness. A man who no longer needed motivation. A man who could enter chaos with a calm mind and leave it unchanged. This level of discipline did not make warriors emotionless. It made them precise. Emotions still arose, but they no longer dictated behavior. Fear became information, not command. Pain became sensation, not limitation. And once this internal order was established, external discipline became effortless. Waking early was no longer difficult. Training daily was no longer debated. Endurance was no longer forced. Because discipline was no longer an act. It was a state. This is the discipline most people never reach. Not because it is impossible, but because it is quiet. And quiet work feels invisible in a world addicted to noise. But Bushido mastery was never about being seen. It was about being ready. Ready when tired. Ready when afraid. Ready when everything falls apart. In the next chapter, you'll see how this internal discipline was tested under pressure, when silence gave way to chaos, and how Bushido training prepared warriors to remain unbreakable when consequences were real and irreversible. Because discipline that survives comfort is rare, but discipline that survives chaos is legendary. Chapter 4. The breaking point where discipline is forged. There comes a moment in every path of mastery when progress stops feeling like progress. The body still moves. The routine is still followed. The discipline is still practiced. But inside, something changes. The mind begins to whisper. It asks questions it never asked before. Why am I doing this? What is the point? Who am I trying to prove something to? This is the phase most people never talk about. Not because it is rare, but because it is uncomfortable. In Bushido training, this moment had a name. It was not called failure. It was not called weakness. It was called the breaking point. And contrary to what modern thinking suggests, the breaking point was not something to avoid. It was something to reach. Because discipline is not forged when things are hard. It is forged when things stop making sense. The Bushido masters understood something deeply unsettling. Anyone can be disciplined when motivation is present. Anyone can push when the reward is visible. Anyone can endure when praise is nearby. But true discipline begins when all of that disappears. When no one is watching. When progress feels invisible. When effort feels wasted. When the mind demands escape. This is where most people quit. Not because they are incapable, but because they misunderstand what this phase means. They think the discomfort signals something is wrong. Bushido taught that discomfort signals something is working. In ancient training halls, students were deliberately pushed into this state. Repetitive drills with no variation. Hours of silence. Tasks with no explanation. Endurance without applause. Not to punish them, but to expose the mind. Because until the mind is exposed, it cannot be mastered. At the breaking point, the ego begins to collapse. The ego wants results. It wants recognition. It wants to feel special. When discipline offers none of these, the ego panics. It creates excuses. It invents doubts. It magnifies pain. It whispers shortcuts. Bushido training did not argue with these thoughts. It let them speak. And then it taught one brutal lesson. You are not required to obey every thought you hear. This is where the training shifted. Up until now, discipline was physical. Wake up early. Train longer. Endure more. But at the breaking point, discipline became internal. The warrior was no longer training the body. He was training attention. When pain appeared, he did not label it good or bad. When boredom arrived, he did not fight it. When doubt surfaced, he did not negotiate. He observed. Bushido called this state Mushin no mind, not the absence of thought, but freedom from being controlled by it. This is where modern people struggle most. We are conditioned to react immediately to discomfort. Hungry? Eat. Bored? Scroll. Tired? Quit. Uncertain? Distract. Bushido training removed these escape routes. The warrior learned to sit inside discomfort without resolving it. Not to be tough, not to be numb, but to become stable. Because a mind that can remain stable under discomfort becomes dangerous, not violent, unshakable. At this stage, discipline stops feeling heroic. It feels quiet, almost dull, almost pointless. And that is exactly why it works. The Bushido masters warned students about this phase. They said, if you still feel powerful, you are not there yet. The breaking point is humbling. It strips away identity. You are no longer the disciplined one. You are no longer the strong one. You are just someone showing up, again, and again, and again, without drama, without emotion, without reward. This repetition, without emotional payoff, rewires the nervous system. The brain learns something new. Action does not require motivation. Effort does not require excitement. Discipline does not require belief, only presence. This is the point where discipline stops being something you do and starts becoming something you are. The Bushido warrior did not measure progress by results. He measured it by steadiness. Can you remain consistent when improvement is invisible? Can you remain calm when effort feels wasted? Can you remain committed when nothing pushes you forward? Most people fail here, not because they are weak, but because modern culture taught them the wrong signals. We are taught that motivation precedes action. Bushido taught that action creates stability. We are taught to chase inspiration. Bushido taught to outlast emotion. We are taught to optimize comfort. Bushido taught to become independent of it. At the breaking point, the warrior learned the most terrifying truth of all. The mind does not need to be conquered. It needs to be ignored, not suppressed, not fought, not silenced, simply not obeyed. This is why Bushido discipline looks cold from the outside. No hype, no affirmations, no emotional speeches, just quiet repetition. And over time, something irreversible happens. The mind stops arguing, not because it agrees, but because it realizes resistance no longer works. This is the moment discipline locks in. The warrior no longer needs rules, no longer needs pressure, no longer needs structure. The behavior continues even when desire disappears. This is mastery, and it is frightening, because a person who can act without needing motivation cannot be controlled by fear, pleasure, or distraction. The Bushido masters believed this phase separated men from boys. Not physically, psychologically. Most people live trapped inside their emotions. They move only when they feel like it. They stop when it feels uncomfortable. They quit when identity is threatened. The disciplined warrior moved regardless. Not recklessly, not aggressively, but deliberately. At the breaking point, discipline becomes silent power. No one sees it. No one applauds it. No one rewards it. And yet it compounds daily. This is why Bushido discipline terrified enemies. Not because warriors were strong, but because they were predictable under pressure. They did not panic. They did not hesitate. They did not collapse emotionally. They had already faced their breaking point long before battle. In the next chapter, you will see what happens after this phase. What emerges when the ego dissolves. When discipline no longer feels forced. When action flows without resistance. Because beyond the breaking point lies something rare. A form of self-control, so deep it no longer feels like control at all. It feels like freedom. Chapter 5. The Price of Mastery. There comes a moment in every path of discipline when the truth can no longer be avoided. Not everyone is meant to walk this road. Bushido was never designed for comfort. It was never meant to make you feel good about yourself. It was designed to strip you down to what is real, and then demand that you live up to it. By the time a warrior reached this stage, the training was no longer about learning new techniques. It was about paying the price of becoming someone different. Because discipline always asks for something in return, and Bushido asks for everything. At this level, the master no longer watched how the student trained. He watched how the student lived, how he spoke when tired, how he acted when no one was watching, how he responded to disrespect, how he handled boredom, discomfort, silence, and fear. The warrior learned a hard truth. Discipline does not show itself in moments of intensity. It reveals itself in moments of inconvenience. Anyone can be disciplined when motivated. Anyone can focus when inspired. But Bushido demanded discipline when nothing felt meaningful, when the body was exhausted, when progress felt invisible, when doubt whispered that the effort was pointless. This was the stage where most disappeared, not because they were weak, but because they wanted relief more than respect. Bushido taught that weakness is not a flaw. Attachment to comfort is. So the training changed again. The warrior was given less instruction, not more. Less guidance, less feedback, less reassurance. Silence became the teacher. Tasks were repeated endlessly with no praise. Mistakes were ignored. Success was not acknowledged. At first, the mind rebelled. Am I improving? Does this matter? Why am I still doing this? This was intentional. The final enemy of discipline is the need to be seen. Bushido demanded action without validation. The warrior learned to train without applause, to improve without recognition, to suffer without explanation. Because a disciplined mind does not need permission to endure. At this stage, fear appeared in a new form. Not fear of pain, not fear of failure, fear of emptiness. When discipline becomes routine, the emotional highs disappear. The excitement fades. The identity you built around struggle dissolves. You are left with nothing but the act itself. And that is where true mastery is decided. Most people quit here. They mistake the absence of emotion for the absence of progress. They confuse boredom with stagnation. They believe something is wrong because it no longer feels dramatic. But Bushido teaches that boredom is the gateway. When the mind stops reacting, clarity arrives. The warrior learned to move without inner noise, to act without argument, to obey the task without resistance. This was not submission. This was freedom. Because the mind that no longer negotiates is unstoppable. The master would say nothing, but he would watch, and he would know when the transformation had occurred. It showed in posture, in breath, in presence. The warrior no longer rushed, no longer hesitated, no longer sought certainty. He acted when action was required, and waited when waiting was correct. Bushido mastery was not aggression. It was precision. The warrior understood now that discipline is not control over the world. It is control over response. Pain still existed. Fear still appeared. Doubt still whispered. But none of them held authority anymore. They were observed, not obeyed. This was the final lesson. You do not eliminate weakness by fighting it. You eliminate it by refusing to negotiate with it. The Bushido-trained mind does not ask, "Do I feel like it?" It asks, "What must be done?" And then it does it, every day, without ceremony, without excuses, without self-pity. This is why Bushido was feared, not because it created violent men, but because it created men who could not be manipulated by comfort, fear, or emotion. Men who could stand alone. Men who could endure silence. Men who could act without needing to be understood. And here lies the final cost. Once you develop this level of discipline, you cannot unsee the truth. You will see weakness everywhere. In habits, in conversations, in excuses disguised as logic. And you will feel distance grow. Not arrogance, distance. Because discipline changes what you tolerate. And Bushido destroys tolerance for self-betrayal. You will move slower, speak less, choose carefully. Not because you are cold, but because you are clear. The warrior eventually understood that mastery was not about becoming superior. It was about becoming reliable. Reliable in chaos. Reliable under pressure. Reliable when everything inside wanted to quit. That is the price. And that is why few pay it. Bushido mastery does not make life easier. It makes you stronger than life. And once that threshold is crossed, there is no going back. Only forward. And now, as the dust settles and the noise fades, understand this. Bushido was never meant to be admired from a distance. It was never designed to inspire you for a moment, then be forgotten. It was built to change who you are, not through comfort, not through motivation, but through daily confrontation with weakness. The Bushido master did not wait to feel ready. He trained when his mind resisted. He acted when excuses whispered. He showed up when quitting felt logical. Because discipline, in its purest form, is not about intensity. It is about identity. When you choose restraint over impulse, when you choose effort over ease, when you choose silence over noise, you are not just improving habits. You are forging character. The world today will never demand this level of discipline from you. It profits from your distraction. It rewards your weakness. It feeds your comfort. That is why Bushido matters more now than ever. You don't need to become ruthless. You don't need to become extreme. You need to become consistent. Train your mind to obey. Train your body to endure. Train your spirit to remain calm when pressure rises. Do this day after day without drama, and something irreversible happens. Weakness loses its voice. Fear loses its grip. Discipline becomes natural. This is not a challenge. This is not motivation. This is a path. And once you walk it long enough, you don't need inspiration anymore. You become the standard. If this message resonated with you, stay on this path. Subscribe because the training continues. And comment below with one discipline you will begin practicing today. Just one. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Today.